Over the last several segments, we've been talking quite a bit of the different types of things that you can engage in to be a great mobilizer. In this segment, I want to talk specifically about a particular task that I think many Christians have the opportunity to engage in, but for one reason or another, choose not to. And I believe it's an incredible missed opportunity. One of the things you can do to be a great mobilizer is engaging with international students. In any given year in the United States, there are more than 200 nations represented on college campuses in the United States. Now, you may say to yourself, Kenny, aren't there only approximately 200 nations or so? That's correct. Almost every nation on planet Earth, every country that is recognized by the United Nations at any given time has at least one representative, if not more, on some college campus in the United States. In essence, you could say it this way. The nations are coming here. Every single year, the nations are sending people to our college campuses, to our backyard, and then they're going back home, in many cases to places that Americans could never go share the gospel. More than 60% of all international students come from closed countries. That is, they come from countries where it is illegal to evangelize, or it's illegal to be a Christian, or the culture is, generally speaking, very hostile towards the gospel. Again, more than 60% of all international students that come from other countries, from around the globe to the United States, are coming to the U.S. from closed countries, places that it is extremely difficult to preach the gospel. What if we as Christians engage with international students in our backyard, showed the love of Christ, introduced them to Jesus, discipled them and mentored them in the faith, and then send them back home as missionaries to their own countries? What would the world be like if Christians here in the United States took very seriously this incredible, wide open door opportunity to minister to international students? The tragedy is that 80% of all exchange students come to the United States and they say that they leave never having been invited into the home of an American. Let me say that again. 80% of every single exchange student that comes to this country never once steps foot into the home of an American. Friends, this is a tragedy. Christians, we are failing in this regard. For many years, I ignored this opportunity, and it wasn't until relatively recently, over the last few years, that I began to take this very seriously. I began to reach out to international students. When I was a local church pastor in Central Florida, I lived within a 20-minute drive to Disney World. And Disney World has employees from close to 200 different nations. They bring people from all over the planet to Central Florida to work there at the parks at Disney World. Some of my friends there made significant efforts to adopt different people groups, and I got a chance to connect with some friends of mine there who had adopted a particular people group from China. And so we began to spend lots of efforts spending time with Chinese international students who had come from China to Central Florida to work at Disney World and take college courses through local colleges there in Florida. This was an incredible opportunity, and we saw multiple Chinese students come to faith in Christ. We had the opportunity to mentor them, disciple them, and then send them back to their home country, to their home region as missionaries to their own families and own people. This is an incredible opportunity that we have that I think many Christians must seriously consider engaging in. Many of you live in proximity to a college or proximity to some large company that has international peoples coming to work for them. I'd encourage you to invite those people into your homes. Invite them in your home for holidays, for birthdays, for special events, and build a friendship with them. Here's another statistic that I think is quite staggering. In any given year, we have people that are exchange students that will eventually become heads of states. That is, that people who are the future kings, future presidents, future dictators of their countries at some point in their life, before they become the head of state, before they come to power in their home country, were students here in the United States. In fact, according to the United Nations, approximately 35% of all of the heads of states on planet Earth today, at some point, were students in the U.S. Let me say that again. I think this is a really, really powerful thought process. A third of all of the world's powerful political leaders, a third of all of the presidents, prime ministers, dictators, and kings on planet Earth today, a third of them, at some point, were students at colleges in your hometown, in your backyard. Can you imagine what the world would look like if, let's say, a Saudi prince who was an exchange student at a major American college had been invited into the home of a Christian and had come to faith in Christ and goes back to Saudi Arabia as a missionary to his own people, and then when he becomes the head of state, when he comes to power, is a Christian believer now? What difference would that make in that Muslim country, in that closed country? Newsflash, almost all of the Saudi princes alive today have been exchange students at some point at an American university. And to my knowledge, none of them are believers, and none of them were reached out to by Christians. Friends, this is a tragedy. We have got to make a difference. In your backyard, in your city, in your hometown, there are loads of people that will go back to their home countries one day and hold very powerful, influential positions. Politicians, business owners, teachers that are here studying and learning that will go home and have influential roles to play in their home countries. People don't come to the U.S. as exchange students unless they come from a family that in most cases is relatively influential or relatively affluent, which means the students that you have the opportunity to impact are going to go home and immediately step into very influential scenarios, influential positions and opportunities. And at minimum, they can go back and be missionaries to their own families. If you welcome people in your own backyard, if you engage with international students, it will give you an opportunity to be a missionary to places without ever stepping foot in those countries. This is an incredible opportunity. Can you imagine if some of the heads of states in Middle Eastern countries, currently dominated by radical Islam, these countries that are hostile toward the gospel, could you imagine if loads of them came here, became Christians, and went back and were different? How might those countries be different? How might the world be different? Let me give you another example. In the 1970s and 1980s, it was estimated by most missiologists that the nation of Mongolia had virtually no Christians whatsoever. As far as we know, there were no evangelical Christians in the nation of Mongolia in the 1970s and 1980s. However, there was an exchange student to Stanford University who came to faith in Christ, and in the early 1990s, she went back to her home country. And most missiologists believe today that in the nation of Mongolia, there are approximately 300,000 Christians. All of them can get traced back to this one Christian who went back home, preached the gospel to her family. Her family was turned upside down. They started a small house church, and the gospel began to spread. In the 1970s and 80s, 0 Christians. Today, over 300,000. Why? Because one Christian family living near Stanford University reached out to one young woman from the nation of Mongolia, befriended her, demonstrated the gospel, showed her the love of Jesus, mentored her, discipled her, and sent her back as a missionary to her own people. One country drastically impacted, turned upside down, because one Christian family dared to engage with one international student. My friends, this is an incredible opportunity that we have. I would encourage you, if you're going to be a great mobilizer and you want to make a huge impact, you should go engage with international students. In the next segment, we're going to talk about engaging with immigrants and refugees.